Hello everyone, and welcome to the Reading Party podcast with Megan and Lexi. This bonus episode starts our season looking at modern retellings of the Iliad and Odyssey, ancient stories known for both brutal violence and instances of sexual assault. It is not suitable for under 18s. We hope you have your favourite beverage and snacks ready to go, because we've got our teas and are ready to start spilling the tea on our latest ancient story.
So, this is season 1. We're doing the Iliad, and this is our prediction episode where we're just gonna talk about our expectations and our previously conceived ideas, expectations, whatever, about what we think we're going to encounter, and then hopefully at the end of the season we will figure it out and find out whether we were like super right or like totally wrong, or if we had our opinions changed. So going right into this, Megan, how much do you know about or remember about the Iliad and the characters central to it?
That is a good question. I know, so I read the Iliad in high school, which was a few decades ago now. And then I did read it again in college, likewise a few years ago. So I can remember the general outline of the plot. I know the main characters and like the big events, but I'm pretty sure there are little bits and pieces that I've forgotten. And I didn't ever read an awful lot of the surrounding mythology. So I know that there are bits about Achilles and Thetis and the Amazons that, like, I kind of on my periphery. I know they exist because of general pop culture, but I don't know the specifics, and I don't know what out of my impressions are based on actual source material and what are, for example, made up by Marvel. How about you?
I had to read it in high school. I don't remember what year, but I read it in high school, and the Odyssey, of course. But then when I got to college, being a classics major, I didn't have to read the whole thing all the way through, like, multiple times. I took like one Greek and Roman epic course where I did have to read the poem all the way. And then because I was taking like smaller sort of elective courses that dealt with themes from each, it was reading a lot of the excerpts of like multiple chapters or whatever. So like I've gotten bits and pieces here and there, so I've definitely forgotten like the sequential order of things and a lot of details. Even some names sometimes now I'll get them confused because I've sort of mashed them up into the the masher and use them for all kinds of different things. So, but I mean, generally the story and the main characters, like, that's the kind of stuff you don't forget. And then just having consumed popular media, even as wrong as a lot of them are, details do stick out to me. I definitely, it's been a while, but I'm excited to get back into things. One thing I definitely remember, though, is in all of the adaptations, I have never liked Paris and Helen. What about you?
Yes, hard same. They're annoying in the poem, and they are annoying in... I haven't watched or read a lot of adaptations, but like you, the ones I have read and watched and do remember, they've just been irritating. Very, like, there's this whole... It's kind of Romeo and Juliet-esque, but without the... I don't know, there's a tragic element to Romeo and Juliet, and that they're both kids, and this is genuinely stuff that they don't have any say in. I feel like with Helen and Paris, they're adults. They know what they're doing is wrong, and they go ahead and do it anyway. And then a lot of times there's this kind of angst about, oh, our love is causing so much hurt and suffering, but we must continue. No, actually, just, Helen, go back to your husband. Paris, keep it in your pants. And the world would be a much happier place.
I mean, yes, on the one hand, I do agree, but also, from what I remember, because the gods play such a role in it, and like they really forced kind of these, because to me they were never star-crossed lovers, so it was very much a product of the gods doing that kept them together, even though I feel like at least one of them at least has had to like sort of grow a spine and be like, maybe this is wrong, maybe we shouldn't cause the deaths of like, you know, thousands of people. Maybe. But I can't remember, so hopefully we'll discover that.
No, I do think you're right, and I think going into this, I'm going to be very interested to see how the gods are dealt with, especially in the screen adaptations, because I think it's difficult to do without being overly cheesy, but then if you leave them out entirely, which I think a couple do, if you leave them out entirely, the whole impetus for the war is gone, and it is just resting solely on Helen and Paris, which makes them even more unlikable than I think they usually are to begin with.
True. I don't know. I do like how a lot of people compare Romeo and Juliet to this story. Although, do you remember Paris and Helen's ages? Because I know that Romeo and Juliet, they're what, like 14 and 12 or 13 or something like tragically young, which is why. And I find it funny because people don't remember that the full title is like The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. But people are like, no, that's not a tragedy. It's so it's just Romeo and Juliet. And I'm like, no, but.
Love story. It's like, it is a love story, but everyone dies at the end.
Exactly. So, like, I guess I chalk Romeo and Juliet up to like, they're sad. They're sad, and they're young children who were not taught, and they're living in an age where everything's forbidden, and then you have the unique dynamics of the rivalry. So I feel like that's very much, they got carried off with their passions and just like were dumb children and didn't know better, and then no one stopped them from doing dumb things like trying to, you know, kill each other. So that I'm a little more forgiving of because of their ages, but I'm like, I don't remember Paris and Helen's ages. But if they were like grown ass adults, I'd be less forgiving.
Well, Helen's been married for a while, and yes, women got married very young, but she's been married for a while, and she and Menelaus don't they have a kid? Like, so she's probably older than Juliet.
Yeah, I mean Juliet was like 12 or 13. I mean, I'm sorry. I was just thinking, like, logistically, what's...
Yes, logistically speaking, she has to be.
Because well, okay, I don't actually remember, but isn't the range when, like, a young girl finally develops and, like, gets her period? I mean, yes, you can get it as young as 9, but I'm assuming, you know, most people even back then were not, like, 9-year-olds having children, so I gotta believe that if she's, like, 12, she still might have been too young to start her menstrual cycles.
Maybe.
Yeah. But, you know, with Helen clearly having a daughter, she'd have to be, you know, what's like the median age when you start? 13, 14, 15? No, 16's late.
Let's say for the sake of argument,
sure.
13.
So she had to be well past that, at least, which puts her way past Juliet.
Still not as necessarily very old.
That's true.
Though. I've never thought about this before. Like, she could, depending on how old the daughter is, she could still be, like, late teens.
That's true. She could, oh my god, wait, I've never thought about this. I'm like, wait, Helen, teenage pregnancy?
We're making Helen sympathetic! No!
Oh no, like, Helen, teenage pregnancy. Like, but they didn't have high school, so no one could congratulate her or, like, you know, shame her and be like, you didn't make it past teenage pregnancy, Helen, what are you doing? But yeah, so I'm like, I don't know. For the sake of argument, let's just say maybe she could have had her daughter Hermione at like 18.
Yeah, let's say she's old enough to know better.
Sure. Well, also because then even if the child was born when she was like 18, from what I remember, the child was old enough that like she was already considered for marriage, right? So she's not some like baby. So.
Yeah, so we're talking about grown-ups here. Grown-ups who should probably not be having affairs with foreign princes.
Exactly. So even if she had her in the younger end as a teen, with the time it takes for the daughter to be of marriageable age herself, which would have been at least 13, she would have been mid-20s maybe. So your brain is developed at like 25 or 26 as a young girl. So like she was an adult. She was an adult. Wow, I'm reading way too much into the actual age of these fictional characters. Paris himself was older too, so let's just go with he was older. So he was definitely an adult. So, he should have known better. But yeah, I don't know. So definitely, I guess one of my main predictions is that I did not like them before. And I don't think that my opinion of them is going to change all that much. Based on just how
I think it would have to be done. I think the writing or the screenplay would have to be done in a way maybe that is not strictly in keeping with the poem for me to like or be terribly sympathetic to Helen and Paris.
I mean, they'd have to just make them do stuff or like make them, because to me the biggest problem of them, especially when I read them in the source material, is that they not only do they not seem to sort of care about what's happening around them other than their love, but like they're not even written in a way where they try to do something that would improve their standing, because it's like, Helen. Also, this is actually, I'm very curious, when you have read the Iliad before, are you on the side of she went willingly or was she stolen? Because I know that's a hot topic of debate in certain representations.
That's a good question. I've never really come down on either side. I think you can probably read it successfully in both ways. Because weirdly, she's kind of a minor character in the actual poem.
Yeah.
Given that she kicks the whole thing off, or the whole war is about her, she doesn't do or say an awful lot. So I think there's a lot of freedom in there for interpretation and reinterpretation based on what kind of story you want to tell.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's true. I mean, I've seen adaptations done, I think, where like she has left voluntarily, which to me makes her seem even more unlikable. But then you also have the she's stolen, but then because she doesn't insist on going home to like her daughter, that's a different kind of unlikable. I don't know. To me, it's like having her be stolen, quote unquote. To me, that tries to add a layer of sympathy to her. So I find it curious that like what they do with that after she can still be written so in such an unlikable way. So I suppose it doesn't really matter whether she was stolen or whether she left. But either way, even after she was gone, however she was gone, like she's still a foreigner going to a foreign place. And so I find it curious that like there's no mention of her even attempting to sort of ingratiate herself in a new society.
What I would be interested to see, and I don't know that this has been done. I'm not aware of anything. What would be interesting is to see an adaptation where she is stolen and spends the whole thing begging to be let go again. And Paris is like, no, the gods promised you to me, you are mine. And because Priam is so devout and so pious, he's like, no, sorry, honey. The gods promised you to my son. This is kind of how it goes. We're not going to send you back and risk angering them. That would, I don't think it's been done, but that would be interesting.
That hasn't been done except in my mind. I remember like my mom when I was little, she got me like a very cartoony sort of book of Greek myths, very simplified, of course, for a young audience. So nothing traumatic, nothing about kidnap and
nothing about the creation of the Minotaur.
Exactly. No kidnap, no rape, no weird incesty things, just light little cute cartoons. And I don't remember who wrote it or what it was or where it came from, but I remember picking it up at my school's library when I was like, I think I was like 8 or 9 or something really young. And I first read this very simplified story, and I had it in my head that she was stolen by the evil Prince Paris, and that she was like a good loyal wife who loved Menelaus, and she was stolen. And I remember after reading that, whatever it was, I was like, justice for Helen. She was stolen from her home, and Menelaus is like this wonderful, devoted, like husband who loves her, and it's a passionate love story of, you know, he and his comrades are trying to go get the wife back.
That would be a really interesting story. Someone needs to get on this.
I want to see that adaptation. Please, will someone just do no, it's so creepy. I don't know why I'm thinking of it, but right now I just had it popped into my mind the Silence of the Lambs, like where Buffalo Bill keeps whatever her name is in the well, and she's like, "Please, I want to go home." I'm like, oh my god, what if we saw that? So it's like.
So we're not only rewriting the Iliad to be Helen-centric, but also to be a horror film, like psychological torment type thing. I mean, I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it.
But if you think about it, has anyone ever tried to do a horror adaptation of the Iliad? I don't think so. Because everyone takes themselves too seriously.
I know, and it's got really good bones for it.
Yes. Because I think everyone who does it takes himself way too seriously, because when you do it, it's either like supposed to be some star-crossed lovers type shit, or it's done in like a way too serious dramatic type of thing. And so I want to see something either horror or something just sort of fun and playful done with the source material, because I think you could really turn it into some sort of comedic thing. No one knows what to do with the gods, so it's really annoying because you just have either some sort of pseudo like, oh yeah, we're sort of doing something, or they're not there, or like, so I just want to see someone like poke fun at it, because I think you can.
Well, maybe we will find that comedic interpretation. That would be exciting.
Oh please, yeah, I hope.
Anyway, now we've completely rewritten the whole premise. I think we're onto something, by the way. This idea is copyright Megan and Lexi 2022. What are your predictions for Achilles? Like, do you generally like him from the source material?
No, from the source material, he's a pouty little brat who sits in his fucking tent and just goes, oh, woe is me, life is hard because someone stole my treasure. And it doesn't even say, because from the Briseis thing, you know, you could write it in a way, someone could write it in a way, where it was like he would sort of fell in love with her, love at first sight, attraction, where he's like, oh no, Agamemnon stole my Briseis, and now I'm so hurt and lovelorn. But no, they write it as in she's just a possession, and so he's like some strumpet in a tent being like, he took my toy, you know. So I'm like, nah, this is fucking horrible. So no, I don't like Achilles from the source material in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, I think that if he weren't by reputation the best warrior in all of Greece, I would say he's a useless little twat. But I can't say that because he's apparently the best warrior ever.
Excellent analysis.
Thank you.
So what would they have to do to make you like him?
To make me like Achilles, they have to. I mean, I like the sort of philosopher king trope where if you make him not just some sort of rabid wild dog killing machine of I like killing people, because that's what people tend to do. I find that most adaptations are like, okay, we're just going to make him sort of like a warmonger who likes war for the sake of war, and he just doesn't have a conscience killing people. So I'm like, if you put in this very sort of philosophical, like, I understand that this is my talent and I'm good at it, but it has to be for a specific reason, I think I would at least respect him more. I don't know if I would like him, but I think I would respect him more. What about you?
I mean, generally same, right? He's not terribly likable in the source material. He does a lot of pouting. I think I've described the Iliad to my husband before. Well, no, not to him because he's actually read it. But I've described it to someone before as like one man sitting in a tent for 10 years. It's not quite that extreme, but like there's a lot of tent sitting. And it's just, like irritating because it's like a male ego, a battle of male egos, really, rather than, like you said, anything to do with the fact that there is a human person who has been passed from one man to another. Like, that doesn't really matter. So he's very unlikable to begin with, and I think for an adaptation to be sympathetic, I think they'd have to do a lot of work rounding out the character. He's quite two-dimensional, which, you know, is fine. It works for epic poetry. It definitely works for what it is. But if we're looking at it as like a broader story, I think he needs some backstory. He needs to have more motivation, I think, than this is what I'm good at and I want to be famous. Or if that's the motivation they're going with, there needs to be something behind it.
As I said, philosopher king.
Because I know that works for an ancient audience, but it doesn't really play terribly well in modern society.
No. I mean, yeah. I mean, I suppose if you take it in the context of, like, things were pretty much simplified and you didn't have like a large stable of literary either protags or antags who were like beautifully written, that would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But like girl, looking back, we have like Shakespeare, we have beautiful antagonists like Iago and Othello, and then we have really interesting sort of protags but aren't super just good guy, like Hamlet.
Yeah, like Hamlet. Jinx.
So it's just like, because we have in modern times all these brilliantly written people, the fact that you make Achilles so two-dimensional is really kind of a letdown, honestly. So I'm like, I'm trying to think. Wait, who else?
Not that we're knocking Homer, right? Just to, everyone should know, we're great fans of Homer.
Oh, yes, we love the ancient source material. That's why we majored in classics.
Exactly. But if you're taking that as your starting point, you can't then just stay there. You have to bring it forward.
So I guess for me, Achilles, just make him more... Just give him a purpose. Make him more three-dimensional. The other two people that I'm going to wrap together in one, because we kind of can't talk about one without the other, that I'm curious is... How do you feel about Menelaus and Agamemnon, and do you like them? Do you not like them? Are you ambivalent?
Menelaus I'm generally kind of ambivalent about. I always get the sense that he doesn't have a whole lot of say in anything that happens. And it's like his wife that is stolen or runs away, whichever way you're reading it. In terms of the ethics of the source material, he's the wronged party, but almost none of the epic is actually about him. He and Helen are like the convenient excuse for Agamemnon to go and sack Troy. And I don't like Agamemnon. So I am very familiar with Agamemnon's story. I read the Oresteia in high school as well. And he's just, I mean, from killing his daughter to just all of it, he's wildly unpleasant and very, he's a king, so he's entitled and bombastic and toxic masculinity at its finest. So again, I feel like what I'm saying here is I don't like anyone in the Iliad, and making them sympathetic is very difficult. So I'm not anticipating really liking anyone, maybe. That's a bizarre way to go into a podcast series. I hate all of them.
I hate all of these twats. It's okay.
That's not true. I like Chryseis and Briseis are really interesting, and Patroclus is kind of sympathetic.
But they're one-dimensional because they're barely
yes,
they're mentioned, but in the context of someone else. Like, they're not even full people, which is a shame.
Odysseus. I like Odysseus.
See, to me, Odysseus is like, he fits the category of problematic faves, you know, because he's a problematic fave. Because I do find him one of the more entertaining characters, but he's not like good. He's not good. That's the problem.
He's not good, right? He's interesting.
He's interesting. He's kind of fun to read. Dare I say that? He's fun? I don't know if I even dare say he's fun. But, like, he's just... They give him more personality than other people. And then others are, honestly, just mentioned randomly or not.
Oh, what are your thoughts on Agamemnon and Menelaus, though?
So because of that one cartoon and the muscle memory of sort of liking him when I was like 8 and discovering this comic book, obviously after I read him in the original source material, and obviously I have seen some different adaptations here and there throughout the years, you know, it's unavoidable. You see the Brad Pitt Troy when you're in like high school or college or whatever. I have seen it, but I haven't, you know, taken like a microscope to it, so I'm really excited to get into that this season. But from what I remember, like, obviously there are ways of making him very, very unlikable, but I think that there are ways to... I've seen him be very unlikable, Menelaus unlikable, but I think there are also ways you could make him quite likable or sympathetic. It would just depend heavily on the sort of adaptation you're going for. You know, was she stolen? So is it portrayed as like a righteous anger, and did he actually deeply love her? Or
is it someone took my favorite toy, or she's my wife, and yeah.
Right. Like, she's my possession. So, yeah. So I think there are ways to do both. Historically, yeah, I've been kind of ambivalent just because I'm like, because again, at the end of the day, he's kind of minor, really. It's because he's not running the show. He's not. It's always presented as, yeah, his wife was stolen, but then he runs to Agamemnon, so Agamemnon runs the whole show after that. So that's why I'm kind of just like, oh, okay, fine.
Who's your favorite character in the source material?
Ooh, I don't know if I even have a favorite because I kind of hate all of them. Yeah, they're all just kind of dreadful. You know,
I'm quite fond of Hector.
I do like Hector because he's the only one who's like respectful, kind of doing his duty. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't want to do anything. So I guess Hector. But see, I was like, I want to kind of not fall into the trope of that, because it is kind of a trope. Because he's so easy to say. I feel like he's the easiest one to be like, he's my favorite. But also, I was going to go for like a really silly answer, and then I realized, wait, LOL, it's not even in the source material. I was just going to honestly be like, the horse itself, the wooden horse. But it's not even in there. No, you know what? Actually, I've always kind of liked Diomedes. Not because he's fabulous, but I've found him to be just a very interesting hero portrayed, because he does do a lot of, like, you know, he has the epic duel. He's very respected. You know, he plays a semi-central role, kind of. It's more just he doesn't do anything super problematic that makes me hate him, and he's a valiant warrior. I mean, I could say Nestor, because advice, but also...
Nestor's good. I do like Nestor. He feels like the one sane person in the Greek camp.
Like, because he was literally there.
Not super sane, but, you know.
Yeah, but he was also trying to advise Agamemnon in all the ways. I mean, wasn't he the one that was like, you should return Chryseis to her father because, you know, people are going to die because of this plague because you're being fucking stubborn and a twat. So, you know, yeah, there's that. I don't know. I feel like, you know, Hector's the easy choice, but it is kind of easy to like him. I don't know. How do you feel about Priam, though? Do you like Priam?
I actually do. I feel kind of like Hector. He's in an impossible situation. I suspect even if he was so inclined, would have a hard time sending Helen back, because then probably his son goes too and is brutally murdered. He's trying his best to keep his city safe, to keep his family safe. And then when he goes and begs for Hector's body, that's just kind of, it's a little gut-wrenching. I think he's a good character. I would like the source material to have more women who speak. That's asking an awful lot from ancient texts, I do realize. So I think I'll be very interested to see how the different adaptations deal with the women, given that there's relatively little to go on in terms of dialogue and really in terms of action. They're kind of given from one man to another, and they like stand around and have the occasional baby. But outside of the goddesses, I don't feel like they have an awful lot of agency. So seeing...
No, of course not. They're women.
Yeah, well, exactly. But that, I feel like that gives you an awful lot of freedom for an adaptation, because there's nothing that they have to do. I mean, Helen has to go with Paris, but the motivations and really what she does once she's there are kind of open to interpretation. So I would like it if there was some interesting things done with that. Maybe things we don't anticipate.
I mean, I've always kind of had a soft spot in my heart for Andromache. But the sad part is that most of what we know about her comes not from the Iliad. It comes from Euripides' Trojan Women. So it's really kind of hard based on just the Iliad as your source material to get any sense of her beyond the dutiful wife with Astyanax. I mean, she did her duty, and so she's like there. But I mean, she's there to be sort of like the sad, weepy willow. And I am not referencing a tree. Yeah, I realize I just made her sound like a tree, but she's not a weeping willow. She's a weeping widow. And it's not a spider either. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else really shows up. I mean, because I think a lot of what I'm encountering, especially as we're leading up to digging into the Iliad, and only the Iliad. It's been a really long time since I've had to do just purely Iliad, because obviously as classics majors we have to read all the stuff, and so then it kind of mixes together. So then you have all these sources, then you put together.
You're like, well, is this Iliad? Was this Odyssey? Was this a play that I read that deals with it? Who knows?
Exactly. So I mean, it melds together. So I'm like, am I remembering this correctly? Is Penthesilea not actually in the Iliad, or is she in there but just mentioned? Because I know that I always look forward to the duels with Penthesilea, but I'm always like, wait, I can't remember if she's actually in the source material.
That's a good question. I'm honestly not sure.
Because she's mentioned, I think. But then I'm also like, random people are mentioned, so like Achilles' famous duel with Sarpedon, I'm always like, I think that's also in the source material, but like no representations to my knowledge have included a character or that duel. So
yeah, no, I don't know. The problem that I have is that there are so many battles and duels that I genuinely forget which is real in the Iliad and which is from something else and which is just completely fabricated for the screen. Someone, I'm sure, will write a comment and let us know.
Yes, please do. Please do. If you know, please let us know. But I guess, okay, well, if we don't remember if she's actually in the source material or if we really get most of that knowledge from after.
She'll be included in the adaptations, though, and regardless of whether she's in the source material, I am excited to see some Amazon action.
Yeah. There's only one adaptation off the top of my head that I am familiar with that doesn't include Amazons at all, which is the Brad Pitt Troy, which I find regrettable. But no, I'm excited to see and hopefully hear that everyone else has included them, because that would be very nice. Oh, wait. Oh, right. Ajax. He's mentioned in a few adaptations, but like, can you remember one where like he actually plays a central role?
No, not really.
Also, they never mentioned that there technically were like two Ajaxes. There's Ajax of Telamon and Ajax the Lesser. They're usually referred to as Ajax the Greater and the Lesser, but I'm like, I know Telamon was one, and I think that's the Greater, but again, I haven't read this stuff in a really long time.
No, I think most adaptations, again, I haven't been through a lot of them, but I think you generally have as the main people Achilles and Patroclus, Menelaus and Agamemnon and Odysseus. And Diomedes and Nestor kind of float around, but they're not like major characters in the way that the others are.
Yeah, adaptations like to just sort of eliminate the large cast of people.
Which, you know, makes sense. It's fewer to keep track of, fewer people to write. But yeah, I don't remember the Ajaxes, either of them, playing a particularly big role.
I just remember the one in the Brad Pitt Troy where he's like this giant dude and then like literally first big battle, he dies. And I'm like, well, that wasn't exactly true, but sure. Sure. I'm glad you had him in there. I don't know. So do you think in any of the things we're going to watch, because it encapsulates such a big conflict, we've talked about how a lot of adaptations will downsize. Do you think any will expand and add people for entertainment value? Because you can play around with such a big thing.
I mean, they could, but I can't think of who they would add in. Like there's no one from mythology that I can think of that I'm like, oh yeah, this would be a really useful addition to a telling of the Iliad. So maybe unless they're going to completely fabricate characters to do something specific, which is possible, but given the large cast of characters we already have, possibly unnecessary. I don't know. What do you think?
I see where, like, obviously because it's such a big cast already, like you wouldn't want to add people for just the sake of adding them, unless you had a tangible thing you were going to do with them. But I could see maybe an adaptation wouldn't be so one-dimensional and start with the kidnapping of Helen or whatever you want to call it and end with the Trojan horse. I mean, you could add in significant like prequel stuff or sequel stuff.
Oh, like backstory stuff for characters. That's true. That would be nice. I would enjoy that.
But then, okay, whose backstory would you most want to see, because there's so many of them? Or would you want to do like mini backstories but for like all the major characters?
So I would love many backstories for the major characters, but if we have to pick one, I think the person who would benefit the most from backstory would be Achilles, because he's such a major figure in the source material, and because he is so very one-dimensional, I think having backstory would really help round him out nicely.
I think so too. I think I kind of would like to see backstory on Helen and Menelaus, just because I want to, because like, since we don't really know their ages, it could help establish their age if you put a backstory and say like, okay, she was newly a woman when her father, you know, married her off. Or they could construct something and have her be like, no, independent lady for quite some time. And so it took some time for all these men to compete for her. And so then by then she was like, not old, but like older. So I think that would be kind of fun. I think backstory.
Having an idea of their relationship as well would help, I think, give more flavor to the conflict, like more personality.
Honestly, even backstory on just Agamemnon and Menelaus would be nice. Like I'm kind of curious actually to see how Agamemnon and Clytemnestra got together.
She's a good character. Not so much in the Iliad, but
yeah, like, because we know how the story ends. No, but we know how the story ends, so it's just like if we could put in prequel type backstory stuff, I think that would be cool. I mean, because we already know so much about Menelaus and Helen anyway, so I'm like, I don't need that. But yeah, how did your brother get so evil and creepy? Or, you know, what was, like, I would want to see, like, maybe what was Agamemnon's previous relation with Iphigenia before he sacrificed? Because, I mean, you know, what you hear is, oh yeah, he sacrificed his daughter, supposedly, you know, he loved her very much. But I'm like, yeah, but is it like ancient world love, which is sort of this transitory, like, oh yes, I love you in the moment, and then not really? Or did he really love her?
Was he a super involved dad who took her to pony shows on the weekends? And
yeah, because I have a feeling he wasn't. Like, I just have a feeling.
Maybe not.
So yeah, I guess that would be one thing I'd like to see, some prequels. I suppose we don't need sequels just because, like, we have other source material that I'm sure we'll review and go through and put together like a big puzzle. But there's never any kind of backstory, so that would be kind of fun. Or even like backstory and like how Priam became king on his sons.
Oh yeah, because he's kind of. I feel like the Greeks are so often the focus. Having some focus on Priam might be interesting.
Yeah, just like, how did he get Troy to be this preeminent power that, or why does Agamemnon want to destroy Priam so much? Because they talk about this hatred between the men, right? Where he's just like, I hate his guts and I'm going to take his city. Like, so was it motivated just by its strategic position and its wealth? Or was it like there was actually some sort of rivalry? Like, is there a tangible reason he doesn't like him? Because that would also determine, like, is he just a warmonger because, oh well, rival city, I'm just gonna take it because I'm greedy? Like, that might be a way actually to make Agamemnon more sympathetic. Like what if in this imagined backstory it was like, what if Priam and Agamemnon were like competing for a woman or competing for something, and Priam gets something, and so Agamemnon's like, no, I hate you.
Oh, this is going to be really interesting.
Like,
seriously, I'm really excited to see how all of these different adaptations play out. Working with exactly the same stuff.
I know, right? Like, that's how I love how different it is.
This was such a good idea. We're geniuses.
We are geniuses. Ugh.
It's just
my favorite people in the world are other classics nerds who just are as nerdy as I am about this stuff. Because, I could probably pose these same scenarios and questions to like my non-classics friends and they'd be like, just chill.
I
don't know.
Calm down.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I know I'm okay, but also,
yeah.
have you considered this?
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah. Okay, so we kind of went through all the main people. Any other aspects that we've missed?
I mean, honestly, nothing that I can think of. I think we've hit the high points. And I suspect as we go and as we record each episode, there will be things that we pick up on and maybe themes that we're not considering now.
Ooh, okay. So then if we've hit on all the high points of the characters of the source material itself, I have a kind of a fun one. Out of the adaptations that we have chosen to do, which one are you particularly excited to get into? Like, how many have you seen versus how many have you at least heard of but not seen? Or yeah, I was kind of thinking about that.
So I've seen the Brad Pitt Troy, and I have read Women of Troy, or Trojan Women. I always forget the title. But that is it. The rest are going to be completely new. And that's very exciting. Having looked at some like still screenshots of Troy Fall of a City, I am excited about that because it looks like it's beautifully shot, and I'm a bit of an aesthetic nerd, and beautiful costuming and nice lighting is the way to my heart, if we're honest. In terms of the books, I am excited about Song of Achilles, because I read Circe by Madeline Miller and loved it, so I'm anticipating enjoying that very much. But also Wrath Goddess Sing, which is brand new and is kind of was the catalyst for us actually starting the podcast, because we were talking on Facebook like, this is super cool, we should read this and talk about it. And then like, we should talk about it to other people. Perfect idea. So I'm really interested in that because it's, and I'm not going to give anything away, but it looks like a brand new take on a very old story, and I am very interested to see where that goes. What are you looking forward to?
Okay, so I will admit to seeing, let's see, I have seen the Brad Pitt Troy. I have seen Troy Fall of a City, but shortly after it was released in, what was it, like 2019 or whatever, so it's been a long time. So I remember the big details, but I'm really looking forward to getting into the smaller ones. I have read, oh gosh, wait, what? I've read 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes when it first came out in 2020. Loved it. I remember from when I read it, I just thought to myself that it probably became one of my top, not even just like Iliad or mythology, but like top books of all time that I've read. It's just one of the best. So I remember it being excellent. So I'm really excited to go back to that and rediscover why I love it so much. Let's see. I guess Wrath Goddess, just because that is what prompted us to do this podcast. And also because I guess I realized that, I don't know if Ships counts or not, but I realized that I had never actually read any sort of novelization of the Iliad. I'd only ever read like the source material and then seen like film and TV adaptations, but I didn't think about reading an entirely new take. So I guess I'm really excited about Wrath Goddess. Also, I got to talk to Maya Dean before we started this podcast, so I'm just really excited to read her work and discover all the wonderful things about it. I don't know. Have you read other novelizations of the Trojan War?
No. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be an adventure, and I'm very excited.
I'm like excited, but also like a little scared, because I'm like, what if it ruins or completely changes what I'm used to? Because you get those weird things where it's, oh yeah, I know what's gonna happen, but like in a novelization, do you though? You get a rough idea of what will happen, but they can change it, and I don't know how prepared I am mentally for like big changes. I mean, I guess you could claim like watching the Brad Pitt Troy, well, that changes a shit ton because all the people who aren't supposed to die. But at the same time, I'm also just like, but I don't know. It feels different between a movie that you understand reasons movies do things, but like books, I suppose it's the same logic, but I don't know. Is there a difference to you?
Yes, a little bit. I think because when you're watching a movie, logically they can't fit everything in that's in the original because they don't have the time. So I feel like it's easier to be more forgiving of changes or omissions. But with a book, you're like, you could just like write that character and it really wouldn't be difficult. But at the same time, I do find it, when I read historical fiction based on mythology, I do find it interesting to look at the changes that are made and try and work out why they've been made. Because I think if it's well done and it's sensitively done, I think a lot of the time it can actually improve the original or improve what you're given by the original.
Yeah, fair, for sure. So yeah, I guess just the anticipation for reading novelizations for the first time. And honestly, I love what we're doing because I've never been in a situation where I'm going to read basically different things, clearly in different voices, different adaptations, but about the same exact topic.
Yeah.
All in a row. So I'm like,
it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this season, and I'm gonna have to remind myself throughout the season that even though we might make references and talk about other works, I have to remember and I'll have to center myself. Like, no, I don't know. I'm super excited, and I'm really excited to revisit this at the end of the season when we've finished our adaptations, and I'm really excited to see if our opinions on any of these characters or whatever have changed. So I guess if I were to wrap up my end of the predictions, it's that I'm open and I'm hoping that a lot of these adaptations might change my mind about the characters. But one, I don't think that any adaptation will make me like Paris and Helen. I think that Agamemnon is going to be an asshole throughout everything. I'm hoping to be proven wrong about Achilles, because I want to say that there are going to be adaptations that make him into a real three-dimensional character. So I'm hoping that even if I don't end up liking him, I'll end up not just thinking he's a pouty little twat. So I just like hope there. And I'm hoping maybe that I even discover an adaptation that is kind of unorthodox, but I'm hoping that I'll find something that is sort of more playful than just like the dreary, super serious
war movies
things that we get all the time.
So I think I'm with you. I don't think I'm going to like Helen and Paris any more at the end of this adventure than I do currently. If I do, I will be surprised and impressed. I think that we'll find some interesting characterizations of Achilles. Because he is such a main character, I think people have probably done things with him aside from the traditional I will kill things now, stabby, stabby, stabby. This isn't so much a prediction, but two things that I am looking forward to seeing is how different adaptations work with the gods and how different adaptations deal with the various women in the story and how they round them out, maybe, with the empty space that is left by the original.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for this season, like a giddy.
And I hope everyone enjoys it. And if you have predictions for your own thoughts, if you're reading along, if you're watching along, I would be interested to hear what you are anticipating or how you think your opinion will be changed as we go through it. So please email us or leave a comment.
Yeah, please do. We love to see them and hear them and everything else. So thank you, and join us hopefully for the entirety of our season and hopefully the rest of the podcast as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review, and you can also follow us on social media at The Reading Party Podcast. If you'd like to leave us a book or movie suggestion, then email us at thereadingpartypod@gmail.com. See you next week.